Honda motorcycle, Rishaad?
I think their focus ever since then has been, we want that number one spot, we want that number one spot.
They sell about 2.5, 3 million Activa per annum. In fact, there are 10 in total lined up in terms of electric vehicles from Honda motorcycle and scooter.
To consider that Honda owns 40% of the world market,
It's
and
phenomenal.
they want to make it 50%. Welcome to Deep Drive, our weekly podcast on all things automotive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. My name is Rishaad Mody. We have Ketan Thakker here with us this week, and this week we're talking about one manufacturer in particular. Ketan, who is that?
Honda motorcycle, Rishaad. They've been going great guns, and big announcements by global management about setting up a dedicated motorcycle electric vehicle plant in India. And in fact, the global head of motorcycle even mentioned that they are at a striking distance to number one position. So the gap is narrowing, and Honda has been growing from strength to strength in India.
Yeah, it's felt like that gap is narrowing. And I mean, if you think about it, Honda has a very storied history in India. They've been here since the 80s. Two partnerships, Kinetic Honda. Most of us grew up with a Kinetic Honda in our household. Hero Honda as well, same story. They went solo in the mid to 2010s, technically
Right.
solo entirely. And I think their focus ever since then has been, we want that number one spot, we want that number one spot. They've been building up to it. And it feels like we're almost there. I mean, I check the sales numbers every month when they come in my emails. And, you know, it's literally calculations. How close are they? And some months they are just thousands of units away from
That's right.
growth.
That's right, Rishaad. I think the month of January, the gap is about 12,000 units. The cumulative financial year, the gap is about 200,000 units. And that gap was a yawning 2.5 million units just before COVID, when Hero had hit its peak. So bit by bit, Honda's getting its act together. Of course, the transition to BS6, Honda had taken a little bit of hit.
Yes.
The scooter sales had gone down. The scooter sales are coming back. Motorcycle sales gradually increasing. SP Shine 125, as we know, is the segment leader, accounting for almost 50% share of the market. Which has in a way taken a sort of a mass market alternative for a lot of Indian two-wheeler buyers. Activa, crazy. I mean, they sell about 2.5, 3 million Activa per annum. In terms of turnover, 18,000 crore. We don't often talk of turnover in two-wheelers, and that accounts for almost 60% of Honda motorcycle and scooters turnover in India. And that brand is ubiquitous to automatic scooter. Earlier, like you said, it used to be known as Kinetic, the automatic scooter category. And over the last decade, people often, especially in hinterlands, call automatic scooter as Activa. So I think both those brands have done really well for Honda. And what has been impressive is how they have been strategically building their portfolio in adjacencies. We saw the Shine 100. Yes, they tried with the Dream series way back in 2012, 2013, when just a few years after they became independent in India. But the Dream series did not do well. With the SP Shine 100, they've begun on a decent note, I would say. I think this financial year they've done about 2.5 lakh of 100cc motorcycle, about 8% of their total sales. So it is definitely incremental volumes that SP Shine 100 has brought in. And plus they've also built the big wing portfolio, and they've been building the mid-size and premium bike portfolio as well. And in Unicorn 160 also continues to be a worthy competitor to a lot of 150cc bikes.
Ketan, you've been following Honda for much longer than I have. Can you reflect on your thoughts on their history?
We don't talk about it often. We talk about how Maruti probably was amongst the earliest one, but Honda also, it entered India in 1984, two different joint ventures. Clearly with Hero, it was for motorcycles, and with Kinetic, it was for automatic scooter. In no time, they were able to come out with really fuel-efficient, high-performing, really quality motorcycles that really helped Hero Group to cement their place and transition from a cycle maker to more of a motorcycle manufacturer. And, as time progressed, we've seen different decades of Honda in India. While the first decade and a half, Hero with Honda kind of grew in size, grew in volumes, and that also contributed to Honda globally. But Honda had only 26% share. It had its own independent ambition. And alternatively, it was trying really hard with Kinetic on the scooter venture. During those days, with the two-stroke automatic scooter, less fuel efficient, you were competing against the likes of Bajaj Chetak and LML Vespa, which were really strong brands. Honda had it hard, and it was not easy to kind of sustain that momentum. But in 1998, they broke away from Kinetic Group, and that gave them that room to, relook at India chapter. 1999, 2000 is when they decided to make their independent entry. 2001 is when we saw an independent Honda coming into the Indian market. But given the fact that Hero and Honda were successful at that point in time, there were different riders that were put on Honda that if you want to enter, you can't get into the mass market motorcycle. And there was a time gap of 3 years or 5 years, if I'm not wrong. And that kind of pulled Honda back. But it was growing with Hero on one front, and independently, the question was, what does Honda enter India with? The first experiment with Kinetic Honda in terms of volumes were not that successful. But they, given the fact that, Hero had compelled them not to get into motorcycle and that to mass market, so they chose scooter. And it started with Dio, Activa, and Eterno. And market expert, in fact, even said that this re-entry probably suicidal in nature. But we saw in no time, first year, 55,000 unit sales. In 3 years, 3 lakh sales. And there it was. Honda was reborn. And then after that, they were really excited, desperate to grow faster. But the other marriage that they had with the Hero was somehow, in a way, won't say crippling, but limiting their growth potential. And then the new Honda again came in 2011 when they separated ways with Hero. Thereafter, again, the endeavor was to try and see if they can beat Hero in the number one game. Of course, it was not easy. It's very hard. Splendor is such a strong name, and Hero did a fabulous job of holding on to its own in the initial years. The Dream Series did not do all that well. But we've seen as to how from a decade to decade, Honda has built its strength. 2013, they also set up their R&D center. 2018, they started exporting motorcycles from India to a more advanced market. So we've seen the growth from 1.6 million in FY or 2011 to 2024, almost 6 times. So it has been a phenomenal journey for Honda, and in a way, it has really unshackled the brand in the last decade, and the real proof can be seen now with the numbers that they're delivering at this point in time.
So why do you think Honda has been catching Hero? Because Hero has the Splendor. The Splendor is, the greatest selling two-wheeler, one of the greatest selling two-wheelers in the history of the world.
Absolutely.
And it is still India's number one selling product by far. But there is a sense that the 110cc, 110cc segment is slowly on a decline, even though Hero's numbers are massive.
As I say, sometimes, your strength becomes your weakness.
Right.
Unfortunately for Hero, what we've seen is that the entry mass category, which is where Splendor is positioned, that category with time has seen the eroding share, and a lot of young Indian buyers are moving to 125, 150cc and above, a space where TVS has capitalized, Bajaj Auto has capitalized, and even Honda has some worthy alternatives there. And which is where, Hero's so to say, tryst has been as to how do you grow beyond your own core. Not to say that they've not tried. In fact, you've ridden some of their premium motorcycles, and I hear from you every once in a while that they are doing a very good job when it comes to engineering. But somehow in the marketplace, the demand for its premium motorcycle is not really there. It is still known as a mass market player. They've tried to get out of the box and try different things with the off-road motorcycle, with adventure motorcycle. But somehow, the acceptance is not there. Looking at the numbers of April to December, the Jan numbers are yet to come. Hero was not even able to sell 50,000 bikes above 150cc
all year.
Per year, this financial year. And despite introduction of models. So that shows that, inability to crack into the premium end of the market, very limited sort of presence in the scooter market. they kept at it with different models.
Right.
They do have plans of bringing in more premium scooters in the marketplace, but somehow the numbers are not adding up, and that is leading to a big challenge for Hero. And like you mentioned, I think the up to 110cc market for Hero accounts for 80% of its total sales. So just like Maruti Suzuki, Hero's facing a similar sort of challenge, the problem at the entry-level segment. And just like Maruti Suzuki, Hero MotoCorp too is hoping that with the growth in economy and with the rural buying coming back, hopefully the buyers will come back.
Yep.
We've heard from management time to time that the penetration of two-wheelers in India is still low, and there is tremendous need for mobility. And two-wheeler is a primary tool of mobility in a smaller towns and places where public transport is not there. And Hero is banking on that. But at the same time, I think time's running out when it comes to the upper end of the market.
I think it's interesting that Honda doesn't have massive sellers in that segment as well. There's one bike that makes a difference for them. It's the Unicorn 160.
Right.
Which is accounting for these big sales for Honda above 150cc.
That's right.
Honda is also pushing on the premium segment as well. Both of these manufacturers have some interesting bikes coming on. You have some secrets that we're going to share.
Yes.
This is in a bit about upcoming Honda motorcycles. But for me, the thing is that I feel like Honda is in a more future-proof space
Absolutely.
in terms of scooters. I am bullish on scooters. I think our market will keep growing in terms of scooters, and I think scooters will really start to even out between motorcycles in the years to come. Activa is a legendary brand. Electric is now started. They're a little late on electric. What are your thoughts on the electric first two EVs from Honda?
Again, it came as a shocker to me when I looked at the price, and something that we were discussing running up to the price announcement. What could it be with battery, without battery? Clearly, having been late in the market, this is not what you were expecting from Honda. So clearly surprised negatively that I was expecting it to be a lot more aggressive, attractive, given the fact that you're coming late. I think, but seems like a baby step. The first few steps, I think, just that's how Japanese companies are. They are sure-footed. They would observe the market. Still, the feeling is that the market is still small, growing, yes, and there is a recognition from the global management as well that the electric vehicle market in India will grow. And there are future plans as well. We will reveal that as we talk ahead. But I'm disappointed, to be honest.
Yeah, so am I. I was expecting aggressive pricing to make up for the lack of specifications and the certain issues with the Activa E in that there's no boot space and you can't charge it at home. Two significant issues to me. So I thought that the pricing would be aggressive to make up for it. And I think maybe Honda's being a little too confident here because that segment is not small anymore. Between Ola, Bajaj and TVS, it's already 60,000 units per month at a minimum.
Right.
Hero is adding another 5,000-7,000 units. Ather is adding another 7,000-10,000 units to that. This is not a small segment anymore. And I think that while Honda is quietly confident that we own the Activa space, we own the bulk of two-wheeler, they should not be taking this kind of an approach to EV. There is a lot more in the pipeline, I understand. But I'm not happy with the pricing and I'm also not so happy with the engineering. I've said this before, we Indians are now thinking out of the box with engineering. If we can develop a scooter that stores the batteries in a sensible place in the floorboard or, away from the boot space, liberate massive boot space, keep a good riding position, this is what people buy a scooter for. I want the boot space in a scooter, and the more you give me, the happier I am. And I think TVS is doing a fabulous job with the Jupiter.
Right.
The Jupiter used to be a very nice mirror image of the Activa. For example, TVS is making an Indian version of an Activa, but slightly nicer in certain ways. No longer. I think the Jupiter is a more compelling product now. It has much better space.
That's fantastic.
It is very nice to ride. We just did a road test. I was impressed by the performance of it and the fuel efficiency of it.
Wow.
And then you have that space. So I think that the Indian companies are pushing forward, and Honda, yes, the Japanese do things slowly and very measured, but they need to pick up the pace with ingenuity in scooter design and development.
I think sometimes sticking to the conventional wisdom, core idea of how a motorcycle or how a scooter is made can hurt. And when I said baby steps, looking at the future plans only, I think what I understand from friends in the industry is that there are barrage of models lined up in the next 5 years. In fact, there are 10 in total lined up in terms of electric vehicles from Honda motorcycle and scooter. And not a surprise that they want to have a dedicated electric vehicle manufacturing facility. In fact, the analyst back in Japan earlier this month, in fact, last month rather, questioned the top management as to why India was chosen as the manufacturing base and not any other part of the world. And there was that reinforcement that the Indian market is going to be the fastest growing market in the coming decade, and electric vehicle penetration is going to grow. So there appears to be belief, there appears to be that conviction, and probably the future portfolio, the commitment to local manufacturing seems to give us that indication that probably these are early steps, and hopefully, just like how they've perfected the other segments of the Indian two-wheeler market, hopefully with the electric two-wheeler market, Honda will progress in a right direction.
It does look that way. Like I said, we're not very happy this first step, but that doesn't mean there is a lot of big stuff coming from Honda with commitment to a plant. And tell us a little about these new EVs that are coming. What do you know?
So, I mean, at least on the drawing board at this point in time, there are at least 4 models between 25 to 27. And the combined cumulative potential of these models, what we understand from our friends in the industry, is in excess of 300,000 motorcycles, the 300,000 volumes, pardon me. And they're going to be coming, one after the other in a 6 to 9 months time frame. So clearly, by the time the new factory comes up in 27, they will have a decent enough portfolio to cater to the Indian market. And what we understand is they're observing the market closely. They're looking at some of the missteps by the rivals. They're looking at specific requirements of the users, and that's the reason why they went with the swappable option with Honda Power Products. So clearly, they intend to cater to both personal and the gig economy. And given the fact that there's significant commitment, you do expect them to proliferate their portfolio. And what is heartening to me, Rishaad, over the last 7-8 years is that we are seeing Honda, which is expressing itself a lot more than the conventional scooters and motorcycles that we saw. I mean, the case in point were some of the premium motorcycles that they're coming out with. And talking about the future product plan, Rishaad, they also have a 160cc ADV planned. So that's a step up. They want to kind of go to the next level when it comes to scooters. We've seen what Yamaha...
160 ADV scooter.
Yes, 160 ADV scooter. This is an internal combustion engine scooter that Honda wants to get into. And like I was saying, the big wing or the silver wing, as they call it, for the mid-size segment, there they have loads of action coming up. They have a 250cc coming up. They call it XR250. We don't know whether
it's
it is...
an interesting name, because the XR250 is a very old name on a dual sport motorcycle.
Right.
Whether it ends up being that or whether this is an internal code, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what. So on the drawing board right now, Rishaad, we have the XR250, we have the Rebel 300, and we have a couple of 500cc motorcycles as well, which could take on the Royal Enfield. Now, what we understand, they're almost at the last leg and should make it to the Indian market between 25 to 27.
Okay.
So these are signs that tells me that Honda will look to protect its core, which is the Activa, which is the Shine, but at the same time, look at building on the 2 key areas where I feel they're lacking, which is the electric vehicle market and on the premium motorcycle market. And I mean, going by their sure-footed approach, yes, sometimes we as Indians, including me, we get a little exasperated with the steps taken by companies, and we actually want more in short span of time. But time has shown, when you look at a company over a decade's performance, then clearly, I mean, they really do deliver. And we've seen it, especially with the Japanese companies. And I mean, just the commentary coming in from the global management about India and how they expect that India is going to be one of the shining armor in the coming decade. I mean, in fact, their global market share of Honda is about 40%. This is excluding China.
That was an unbelievable number when that number came out. Honda owns 40%. We are not in China either way.
Yeah.
The Indian companies have no presence in China either way. So to consider that Honda owns 40% of the world market, and they want to make it 50%.
They want to make it 50% by the end of the decade, and the convictions coming from the growing Indian market. And I mean, there was so much of positive commentary, really excited me a lot. And having understood what the plans at the backdrop in terms of the new model pipeline is, clearly, to me at least, the strategy is adding up. But at the end of the day, it is going to be about whether they are able to deliver out in ground zero.
Right.
I mean, the first proof of electric vehicles has disappointed both of us. Hopefully, the future products that come out would be tailored to the needs of the Indian market. Not to say that Honda has not tried with a 300cc or a 500cc, but what we understand now is that these are locally designed, developed, well, designed in Japan, but with a lot of local inputs, with a lot of local manufacturing. So probably products may be tailored for the Indian market, and they're going to be exported as well. That was one big change happened in 2018 when they kind of revamped their entire infrastructure under a project called Rupantar, wherein India became a base for exports with the OBD1, OBD2 coming. India's norms are now aligned to the global level. So it opens up opportunity in Europe, in US, in Japan. So one can also see India being used as a beachhead for exports. So, I mean, from all ends, I mean, infrastructure-wise, product portfolio-wise, commitment-wise, just gives me confidence that Honda is moving in right direction.
Okay, Ketan, I want to talk more about these 300 and 500cc motorcycles. But before that, I have one question for you.
Sure.
Do you think Honda is going to overtake Hero this year?
It's going to be neck and neck, Rishaad. I mean, Hero definitely is not going to give up so easily. In fact, when they separated way back in 2011, it seemed as if in a matter of just 3 to 4 years, Hero is just going to capitulate. But, kudos to Hero MotoCorp management, and the strength of the Honda engine eventually turned into Hero's own engine, and the Splendor brand that Hero was able to hold on to its own. And it's credit to them that even today, 80% of 100cc motorcycle is with Hero. If the mass market were to revive, Hero is going to pose a stiff challenge to a Honda. But they're at a striking distance. I think with the Shine 100, the incremental volumes coming, automatic scooters coming back for Honda, premium motorcycle doing much better for Honda. It's going to be neck and neck this year, but I feel next year probably could be the year. And if not for that closeness, the global management would not have told media that, we are in a striking distance. We could see it's in our sight. I believe it should happen next year. And clearly the R&D depth and the ability to come out with winning models at Honda definitely is a lot more. And I'm really keen to watch how some of these recent models of Hero, how they play out in the marketplace. Probably then you have the other homegrown rivals also competing. So
yeah, TVS is not far behind either. This month at least.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal as to how each individual brand have their own strength areas, and TVS by far is the most diversified, and as to how they have winning products in different segments. So it's an exciting world to be in, to be honest.
I'm very excited, and I'm excited because I see optimism on both sides. I'm excited about what Honda's doing. I think they're very well diversified, like you said. But I think Hero's coming up with some really exciting products as well. We've just shown 4 of them at EICMA and the Auto Expo. And really looking forward to riding them, feeling very positive about them. There's a more affordable Vida coming. It's going to be I think it's going to be a good battle that we are all going to enjoy, whichever way it pans out, because there's a lot of push for both these companies to look forward to.
No, absolutely. And what's fantastic is that both companies are making really good money. And when you are profitable and when you are committed to a market, yes, there has been a little bit of revamp in the top management at Hero MotoCorp that may unsettle the organization a bit for a short while. But the promoter, Pawan Munjal, is taking the lead from the front. They have dedicated EV arm right now. They have deluge of products lined up. We've spoken about them in the past, that they have series of motorcycle. Hero wants to introduce the Splendor EV. Probably that could be an answer to Activa EV, and probably lead with the Splendor EV.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of models on the ICE front as well. So it's not going to be easy. It is definitely an exciting race. And at the end of the day, the Indian rider is going to enjoy. They'll be spoiled for choice for sure.
It's going to be a hard choice, actually. It's already a hard choice to buy a bike right now. Let's talk about this 300 and 500. The Rebel 300 is a known international model. It's a sort of a cruiser, but an easy riding motorcycle with the engine from the CV300. The CV300 is a wonderful bike, but unfortunately, it took too long for it to come to a reasonable price in India. Absolutely. They launched it at a very expensive price, and they relaunched it at a very expensive price, and then finally they localized it. It is at a good price right now, but the bike is kind of lost in that.
So that is where I feel, Rishaad, that hopefully, like they've learned lesson from the past. Do you think with the localized Rebel 300 that they could probably be in a better position, because I think better bike?
It will be a different bike to the CB300 completely. But if they're able to, the CB300 is not that far off some of the top Royal Enfield singles. So if this Rebel 300 could be a little more affordable and priced a little closer to the Classic 350, it's not going to take away, it's not going to change the fortunes, but it's another little chip away at Royal Enfield when the 350s are already now at about 4,000 units a month. It's down to the big wing dealer network mostly. It's a fraction of what Royal Enfield has.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Royal Enfield has over 1,000 touch points across the country. But yeah, I mean, they are growing there at the network for big wings or silver wings, as they call it. But, I mean, something that I heard you while we were discussing about the EICMA show as well, that, we see a different Honda in India vis-a-vis what we see a Honda world over. I was just completely bowled over by the crowd at the Honda stand in EICMA. I mean, just tell me, what do you think from your perspective, having ridden so many different bikes? Do we really see the Honda character in India? And if the future models is what they promise to be, I don't know how would they be from an engineering standpoint, but are we going to see Honda really expressing themselves?
I don't think we'll see Honda International character here, because Honda International is, they have the bandwidth to do more exciting, sporty things like that B3 concept and all from EICMA. But what I do see Honda International taking on a role now is being the market leader. They are now trying to dictate the market in that we need to make sensibly priced bikes. You and I have discussed this with the CB 1000 was very well priced, the Transalp was very well priced. So they're trying to make high quality, desirable motorcycles at a realistic price, trying to go back to the old days of motorcycling. That philosophy, I think, is what we're going to see in India as well.
Right.
And Honda needs to do it, because so far the premium segment for them has been a struggle, and they need to get that pricing right. And if International is doing it now and shaking up things with their pricing, why can't Honda India do it? I would like to see that happen.
Right. I mean, we often call it fun bikes, right?
Yeah. Honda calls it fun bikes.
Yeah. I mean, Honda calls it fun bikes, right? But you've seen the character of other Japanese premium bikes, Suzuki's and Yamaha's. Do you think Honda needs to amp up a bit when it comes to their product?
Honda is Honda. They will keep their identity because that's what they built all this time. So they may not make the most aggressive, violent sort of motorcycles, but people buy a Honda for a reason. So I don't see that changing.
Right.
This 500 that you mentioned, is it based on an international platform, or is it fully developed in India?
Seems like a localized platform, Rishaad, given the fact that the volumes at hand are sizable from the category perspective, and they're going to do two different alternatives out of it. One of them could potentially be an interceptor rival, and there could be a different form factor, is what we understand from some of the friends who are working with them. Again, the attempt is to kind of chip away, like you said, and move to the next stage, more localized, more tailored to India's liking. And their R&D center, HRID, that was formed in 2013, plays a very critical role in ensuring that what we see globally, some of that translates to the Indian requirement at Honda's quality. So do expect, given the fact that, there is a project locally developed, engineered, while it may be designed in Japan. So I'm just hoping that probably it could be all new.
So if it is an India developed project, that's interesting, because they already have a 500 in the NX 500 that's here in India. Expensive parallel twin 470 ATCC engine. If it's an India developed platform, that opens possibilities. Will they make another parallel twin to take on what Royal Enfield is doing? Maybe not. Maybe they'll make a single. And there is some rumor going around of a GB 500. They've trademarked that name internationally. The GB is the name they use for the Highness, the made in India Highness, but it's called the GB for international markets. And if they do that, I think that's really very interesting, because Royal Enfield has walked away from that segment.
Yes.
They have said, we will no longer make a 500 single. You buy the liquid cooled 450 or you buy the 650/750, whatever it will be. So I think Royal Enfield comes into that space that has been vacated, and it could be a really very nice motorcycle. It could be built to an affordable price. It could be that lovely torque-rich experience with Honda refinement, and takes care of the Highness's biggest issue, in my opinion, which is the lack of bottom-end drive.
Right.
And this 500 could fix that. And I think that could be a really nice bike. It's one of the bikes I'm suddenly become very excited about for myself looking forward. And I hope Honda ends up doing that. When do you think we'll see this 500?
Likely around 26, 27 on the drawing board, final legs. People are working vigorously on it. 26, 27 is when we see it. And that is where my feeling and the conviction comes from, that of late we started seeing Honda really expressing themselves, at least when it comes to expansion of portfolio. Otherwise, you always saw, every single time I would go back to my friends trying to understand where the next big Honda is going to come from, it would go back to the typical Activas, 125, 100, and at best upgrades of Unicorn. But now I'm hearing of expansion of portfolio into different cubic capacities, 160cc scooter, 250, 300, 500. So clearly they are branching out. They are expressing themselves. And the volume throughput, the profitability, the fact that India is fastest growing, I think that is where the confidence comes from.
Okay, so we normally don't share numbers very much here, but Ketan has some very interesting financial numbers that he'd like to share. So
yes, Rishaad. What I feel is that the strength of the company and the strength of its products depends on its balance sheet. And if the company is really making good money, and which is what Honda is doing in India, it definitely then plows back. And we've seen it with other brands in India as well. We've seen Suzuki, we've seen Hyundai on the car front, we've seen Toyota. Now that when India starts delivering on profits, the global headquarter has no other option but to look at India when it comes to expansion for future. We were just doing a comparison over the last for the last 5-year volume. While Hero has seen a decline, a compounded annual growth decline of 7%, Honda has grown by about 4%. The 10-year CAGR growth of Heroes in minus, whereas HMSI has grown by 3%, whereas market has grown by 2%. So clearly, Honda has grown faster than the market. The gap is narrowing between Hero and Honda when it comes to the volume gap. And what is phenomenal is that the revenues have grown and profit has grown at much faster clip. That is the biggest barometer that gives confidence to global management to plow back money into India, to plow back money into new platforms, to use India as an export hub. And that is where the confidence was very clear from the global management when they shared with the Japanese media last month that, India is going to be the fastest growing market. And some of these numbers actually prove the point that, they are not only outpacing the local rivals, but I think the share in the global operation also continues to grow. Yes, Indonesia is ahead of India because Indonesia, I think Honda has a share of over 70-80%, and which is phenomenally high. And in India, they can see that the share is growing, volumes are growing, profitability is growing. So on all metrics, Honda seems to be moving in the right direction. And I think all those efforts of last 3 to 4 decades of having that foot on ground early and understanding the market through joint venture partners is now bearing fruit, I feel.
Awesome. I think we've covered most of it. History, future, expectations, excitement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. I'd like to end on a note where maybe it's time for Hero to stop calling themselves the world's biggest two-wheeler manufacturer.
I also feel so, Rishaad. Look at the numbers that Honda does globally. I think... from a marketing and a sales pitch standpoint, you may kind of convince a few in India, but globally, I'm sure people know who's the big boy.
Yeah, times are changing and it's time for everyone to evolve. Okay, I think that's a good note to end it on. As always, the Deep Drive Podcast will be back next Saturday at 11 a.m. So keep an eye out.